Hello and welcome to Cosmetically Active Interviews. I'm Nina, head of the Cosmetically Active expert team. In interviews with our Cosmetically Active certified brands, we are addressing the topical issues of new, young brands that are on the way or have already entered this highly competitive market. We present their stories, visions, and experiences from an idea, formulating work, testing, and manufacturing to market launch. If you're on the same path, or if you're dreaming about starting your own skincare business and you need inspiration, motivation, or simply that little push, join us.
Hello everybody. This is our second interview with my guest, Jene Roestorf. And without further ado, I will let you introduce yourself and your brand especially. Your brand is Luxe Botanics. We would like to know how, when you launched the brand, what is the uniqueness of your brand? So a short presentation, what is your target audience, and how you developed the brand throughout the years.
Thanks, Tina. Lovely to meet you and so happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me. So to everyone out there, I'm Jene Roestorf. I'm the founder of Luxe Botanics, and we're a multi-award-winning luxury skincare line that's based on a combination of potent, sustainably harvested botanicals and leading-edge green chemistry that both aims to solve the most common skincare concerns while meaningfully uplifting communities. So I actually started Luxe back in 2016 is the year that we launched. I spent 2015 doing R&D, but it comes from, as I'm sure you can hear from my voice and my accent, I am South African. So I grew up in South Africa, and I grew up in a way that was very much connected to nature, with a family that was very much involved in nature. And I did a lot of African travel growing up. So when it came to starting a career, I actually ended up in Australia, and I studied biotechnology and bioethics, and I worked for 10 years in clinical trials, particularly in oncology and dermatology, before ending up managing global trials in Singapore. And at that point, it was 2012. I'd been out of South Africa for about 10 years, 12 years at that point. And I felt this real disconnect from the place that I'd come from. So I ended up booking this incredible trip to Tanzania, and I found myself sitting in Ngurunguru Crater, which, if you've ever been to Africa or know anything about it, it's considered the cradle of mankind. And I was sitting there, and I just had this moment of, what am I doing? What am I doing with my life? What am I going to do that ties me to this place that I love so much and I feel so deeply for, but also combines my scientific expertise? So I had that moment. That was 2012. And it took me 3 years to get up the courage to quit my corporate career in pharmaceutical and try to bring these two things together. And that was where I started doing R&D for Luxe Botanics in 2015. And it really does come from that love of nature, that reverence for everything that I grew up with in Africa, that I tried to find botanical ingredients that would uplift the communities that harvest them for us. So that is a core tenet of Luxe Botanics. No matter what I do when I expand the brand, I will always look for botanicals that uplift communities when they harvest. And of course, the second part is me, the scientist. I'm obviously that way minded. So I spent a lot of time reading clinical trials about skincare ingredients, how these particular botanicals may impact the skin, and really use that to bring Luxe Botanics to life. So we launched in 2016 in the US. We did a soft launch. And, in that time, we've come so far, and to all the brands out there that are watching this, 6 years in, I can just say that so much changes because there's so much learning that comes from actually starting a brand. We did this lean startup model where we did R&D in 9 months, packaging, stability testing, formulations, everything, got it out, sent everyone we knew, from retailers to press, to just anyone we found on Instagram, to find out what they thought of the product. And they absolutely loved it. So we spent 3 years with that branding. We launched in Neiman Marcus within a year, and we learned very quickly that I am not a marketer.
Yes.
So we pivoted the brand in about 2019. We did a rebrand. And since then, the brand has really taken off because we found a way to express to you what I've just expressed about how the brand came to be. You know, our key USPs of me as a scientist founder of the botanicals, you know, and how we harvest them. They really are what make Luxe Botanics different. And you know, our target audience, when we think about a brand like this, I originally wanted this brand to be, you know, accessible to all. But what I realized very quickly is the cost of doing business for a brand that wants to meaningfully give back is actually extremely expensive.
Yes.
You know, getting ingredients out of literally the Rift Valley in Kenya that have to be flown in a tiny little Cessna plane to Nairobi to us, or harvested from the depths of the Amazon, is incredibly expensive. And then being able to give back truly meaningfully in those communities, it really does cost. So in 2019, as I said, we did a pivot. We raised some of the prices on the brand reasonably, of course. And we now find ourselves in the perfect arena of women 35 plus that really value something that gives back, but also has a meaningful effectiveness on their skin, that they can actually see the effects of the skincare that they're using and feel good about using it too. So we are now sold globally, all the way from the US and Canada through Europe, Middle East, Asia, into Australia. I'm very proud to say over 40 countries, over 50 retailers. And I'm just really proud of where this brand has been able to go in 6 years.
Well, that's amazing. It's a very inspirational story.
Thank you, Tina.
And you've got amazing success. You should be proud.
Thank you.
You should be proud. Would you change something? I mean, if you looking back, you know, thinking about this whole process that you just described, would you change anything, or do you think this was this natural path that led you to this success that you have today?
Well, I think this is probably a natural path for a brand that isn't backed by a VC or, you know, some celebrity or someone that is really just starting it with their own money from friends and family, right? You have to go through these iterations as you grow. And I think it is a really important step. I think something I would have done is perhaps simplified a little bit, because anyone that knows me knows I have a very long-term vision. So when I started, I started with 7 products. I had this vision for a whole skincare range. And I think what I realized is that I really spread myself too thin, and I didn't have a big enough team to carry what I could see Luxe to become. So the first few years were super stressful. You know, and if I could change it, I would definitely have looked for someone to support me much earlier than I did, to bring on a partner, and, you know, someone to teach me a bit of marketing.
Yes, yes. I think at the beginning of such a new career path, one of the things that, you know, you are one for everything, right? You should know the formulating, the marketing, everything, but that's impossible.
Oh, completely. I think that's one of the biggest things, is learning to ask for help.
Yes, yes, I agree. And I think the simplification that you mentioned probably comes with experience, right?
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay, great. Great story. Thank you. Okay, let's focus on the formulation work. So how do you prepare? Do you think this first phase, the preparation phase, looking for literature, you know, reading articles, reading about the formulation, is this a good phase to really give you the solid base to continue then? Did you start formulating yourself? Do you now have a team to do that? Also, how many versions of your best performing product did you make in the formulation phase? And then maybe the final point here. How do you test your products?
So I think things change over time. And when I started, you know, with the background that I have, I was really able to understand the formulations that we were creating. So that was a huge advantage. I did, right from the beginning, because of my clinical background, which was very much regulatory involved as well, work with a GMP certified lab from the beginning that had a really fantastic trained cosmetic formulator. So, you know, from the beginning, I've been doing that. I think there's two different ways to look at this. There's the scientific way to do it that I know and that you know, and we would consider as the right way, which is correctly researching your ingredients, you know, looking at all the clinical trials that you can find. And, you know, there's huge data gaps in the natural ingredient and formulating industry, which is why your textbook is so foundational for us and what we do. But the other way to look at it is obviously the marketing way. And I think that's something that we weren't very good at in the beginning. I didn't know any of this. As I said, I'm not a marketer. So now what we do is, while I'm doing the scientific research, so for example, we have about 10 formulations on the go at the moment that I'm researching. And then the marketing team will look at polling our customers, our retailers, press, influencers, sending them samples, getting multiple rounds of feedback. And if we were a bigger business, I would say I would love to do some sort of study or, you know, questionnaires for a broad range of people. But let's set that aside, because that's not me and that's not what I do for the business. So yes, what I do is intensive research while I'm formulating, testing every ingredient. And don't forget that also comes down to the packaging, and the compatibility of the packaging with the formulation is extremely important. You know, I see mistakes like this all the time with people using things that aren't compatible. And it's sad, because it's a good formulation, it doesn't work. So, you know, yes, we did a really quick R&D in the beginning. And the purpose was to get the product out there in the most perfect form that we could. But probably our most complex and best-selling product is our Kigelia serum. And the Kigelia plant is extremely hard to work with. It's a plant it's this massive sausage. It's about 1 meter long, it's crazy. And it grows on trees in Southern Africa. And you have to dry the plant and then reconstitute it in the lab with water and glycerin and some preservatives, and then transport it to our lab in the US, where we then formulate with it into our serum and our moisturizer. And that one took 12 rounds the first time, probably another 10 the second time when we did modern cosmetics, just to change a few things and tweak things. You know, it's incredibly unstable. So, you know, we've had our fun, we've had our challenges, and this is where I really nerd out, because I love our cosmetic formulator. We get on really well. Yes. And she challenges me. So I think that's been a really interesting part of it. In terms of testing and things, again, this is me and my regulatory background. From the beginning, we tested all our formulations for, you know, microbiological contamination, which is something in the US a lot of brands don't do, even though they're actually meant to. And we did our PET testing, so your preservative efficacy testing. You have to check that, and that's going to help you with shelf life. And we did our EU for stability testing for our period after opening in the EU, at a lab in the EU. You know, I learned that the hard way, because the first time I did it, I tried to do it in the US, and they have no idea. So labs in the US, I mean, they try, but it's just not the same as the EU protocol. So
it's a huge difference in the protocols, right? Yes.
It's totally different. And you know, I think this is maybe the part of me that can hold the brand back sometimes, because I am such a regulatory-minded, compliant person, that I might slow things down, but it means that we have a product that is safe for people to use, and that is so important.
Yeah, that speaks volumes to the customers and about the quality of the product, I think. So would you say that, you mentioned the Kigelia product, would you say this is your favorite product?
Definitely.
Yes.
I mean, Tina, if you watch our Insta and you learn anything about me, the thing I don't talk about in our marketing, but is real for me, is that I've had acne skin since I was very young. It's familial. My mother and my grandmother have struggled. So the Kigelia product, it comes from that, as I say, that sausage fruit. But in South Africa, we use in a similar way to, you maybe grew up with aloe vera, where it's like a watery plant. You can put it straight on your skin. If there's an infection or any kind of redness, any kind of irritation, you'd put it on. So I grew up with that. So creating the serum was paramount for me to find something that would help with the acne in my skin, you know, help with that sensitivity, because I'm always red. So it is by far my favorite product. It's our esthetician's favorite product. When they do facials, they put it on afterwards to calm people's skin. So it's definitely my favorite.
Great to hear. Okay, so you mentioned stability testing. This is also one of the services we provide as a team. And you mentioned the protocols in the EU. So how did you find the right laboratory? Tell us something about this whole process.
So, as I said, I started in the US thinking that would be the way to do things. And I increasingly realized with every quote I was getting and every request for an explanation of their kind of study parameters and what they were doing, that there was not a lot of knowledge around what they were doing. And it seemed to be very much just a commercial endeavor. So I actually reached out to a couple of friends who are EU representatives, legal representatives for brands, and interviewed people in the UK, people in the EU, and eventually settled on a testing facility in the UK that I've been using for about 8 years now. It's actually a university-based lab, and they've just been absolutely fantastic. It's for me, I think, because I'm such a people person, you can hear it coming across. I like to deal with smaller organizations where I can know the person and I can phone me and say, this isn't working, let's try that. Or, it's just been so much easier for me to have those conversations, and this lab has provided it for me.
Yeah, I think the brands, maybe the smaller brands, the niche brands usually prefer the more personalized approach.
Definitely.
Yes. Okay, now let's focus now on raw materials. So do you have any issues dealing with, let's say, availability of raw materials, supply of raw materials, prices of raw materials? We hear about raw materials all the time now, especially. How is it with raw materials for cosmetics?
Well, I'll say, putting this year aside, for Luxe, I think the biggest thing has been sourcing those botanicals from our communities because, particularly during COVID, it was extremely hard to get through to people. A lot of people, where they'd come into these cooperatives and process maybe the nuts or whatever it was that they were processing, they might have gone back home to support family. So it was incredibly hard to get hold of people. Luckily, we've kind of come through that, and the communities we work with are quite large. So there's people to step in and kind of take over. I think second to that, the thing that has been happening in industry, again, aside from this year, as a small brand, it's extremely hard to compete for MOQs, to meet a minimum order quantity, whether it's an ingredient or a packaging item. You always get outbid by the big guys. You always end up having to just take what you can for the size that you can afford. And that has definitely affected us. And then moving to this year, it's been, for this industry, no short of catastrophic, I think, and you would agree. The pricing increases have just been absolutely insane. I understand that businesses have to support themselves, and if we could, we would support them as well. I think the supply chain disruption has just been insane. Where previously you'd ocean ship something and it would take 4 weeks. Last year, we had something sit in a warehouse for 6 weeks before it even started its ocean shipping. So it's been catastrophic. There's no other way to say it. I just really hope that we can find a way to make this a bit more sustainable. And to me, that means bringing things closer to home, which I think was a movement in food anyway that needed to start happening across the spectrum, right? Things need to be more localized. And
shorter transportation paths.
Shorter times, but also more sustainable, because something a lot of ingredient suppliers, and I only really speak to the ones I know in the US, a lot of their smaller suppliers went under. And I think we had this huge loss of community and support, so it made it very hard for them to give us the ingredients we'd always had at the quality that we wanted, but also with those connections that we'd wanted to maintain. So we need to find a way to do this, and we need to avoid this agglomeration of corporate power where they are taking over all of these things, because we are losing, as I say, these connections and these truly incredible people making a difference.
Yes. Very good point. Thank you.
Yeah.
You mentioned that the brand has been growing. So congratulations again on that. Can you tell us about maybe your future plans? Could you maybe also emphasize, I'm sure the 2 year of, the COVID pandemic also had an impact, probably, like you mentioned already, a lot of things have changed in the supply chain, raw materials, and so on. And also, throughout these years, how did your team expand? How do you find your employees, your people in the team? How do you select the profiles?
Mhm. Well, I think I'll start by saying, COVID, it really did affect a lot of very niche and small brands, right? I think for us, it was kind of like a giant pause button because we'd really ramped up in the year before. We'd kind of built out our team and everything was kind of, going, and then COVID hit. And we just kind of went, and we just slowed down so much. We couldn't grow at the rate that we wanted. So I've used these last years to kind of research new formulations and, really get my nerd on while we just have to pause and wait to see where things kind of come out. And I think, for me, that's been great because it has meant that we've got this kind of, we've got these building blocks with which we can grow and in different markets with different products should we need to. So that part of it has been great. I think moving forward, what we've had to do is diversify our sales points a lot. We were very specialty boutique dependent, and a lot of those small retailers went under during COVID or this year. This year, I feel like was the cherry on the cake for a lot of them, really, really unfortunately. So we've had to change to be, I would say, more sales agent focused to help us get into perhaps bigger chains, the ones that are dominating now, because those small guys have unfortunately disappeared in most regions. And also diversify into spa, which is why we've got this building out of the Luxe line, because we do want to provide that holistic experience. But also looking at different channels, things like distribution in countries we hadn't thought about before that do have underserved markets. So that's been a really interesting journey to go on. So hopefully by middle to end of next year, we will be throughout the Middle East, Israel, India, and China. Which I think, as I said, are extremely underserved markets, particularly in India with the interest in green beauty expanding. So I think that'll be really interesting. And just in terms of like team growth, as I said, I wish I'd found someone sooner that I could kind of collaborate with.
Yes.
But so I did actually have someone start working on our PR in Singapore back in 2016, a woman named Rachel. And when I moved to Europe in 2017, I remember calling her one day, practically in tears, and just saying, I can't do this on my own anymore. Help. And the poor thing was like, okay, I'm in, So I luckily found someone to come in and help me from about middle of 2017. So Rachel's been on board, and it's been the two of us holding up this brand since then as the core people kind of behind it. And then over the years, what I've always said is that I want to find the best people globally. I'm not interested in having a centralized office. I was never that way. So we've always found people through recommendation. We've got people in Canada, people in the US, people in the EU, people in Australia, so it's a team globally that we work with, so that we also work with the best people. And I think that's just been a game changer for us. I remember an investor asking us 4 years ago why we didn't have an office, and me kind of like rolling my eyes and thinking, well, it's because we have the best talent. So, the team is dynamic depending on our needs and things, which is, I think, the best way for us right now. I think in future, we'll have to see how that changes. But for now, this works very well for us.
Excellent. Let's stay optimistic, right?
Totally.
Yes. Okay, so a very important topic for us is the Cosmetically Active certification. And I read on your blog, on the website, a really, inspirational article, how proud you are of the certification. So I would like you to tell us more about that. Where did you learn about the Cosmetically Active certificate? How do you see the added value for your products, for your, target market also? Whom would you recommend the certificate to? And maybe how satisfied were you with the whole certification process? And how much work did that mean also for you?
No problem. So the nerd in me ordered this book. Oops, you can see it on Amazon, maybe 5-6 years ago. Just when it came out. I can't remember. It's probably 5 years ago.
Yeah, it must have been in 2018, I would say. Yeah.
Feels about right. Yeah, pandemic, I don't know,
Yeah,
somewhere before the
I know
pandemic.
we all lost track of time during the pandemic. Yeah.
But yeah, so I ordered it because I was, at the time I was being hounded to create more products for Luxe, and I wasn't really sure which direction I wanted to go. The formulator I was working with at the time was retiring. So I ordered the book and I started reading, and it just blew my mind. So I, using that as an impetus for conversations on how to move forward for the brand, I told Rachel about it. And Rachel is really the marketing side of Luxe. She is so good at that. And a little light bulb went off for her. And she just thought, we've had such issues trying to explain to people and validate the efficacy of a natural brand. How can we do this in a way that isn't just, I don't want to name names, but other certifications that just look at where the ingredient comes from generally, but there's nothing else to it. And you are, and seem to be right now, and hopefully will be for a while, because I think you do a really good job, the only certification that provides real validation for a brand in what they are doing and what they are selling to a customer. So for me as the scientist, I was already sold. From the marketing side, Rach was, 100% in from the beginning. So we went on this journey with you, I think probably from end of 2018, maybe 2019, somewhere there.
Yes, I can definitely say that you were one of the first.
Probably
Yeah.
the nerd on the other side. Hello.
Yeah.
Trying to
Yes,
understand, how this would work. And,
exactly.
for us, I think it took us, I think, 2.5 years, but that's not to say it wouldn't be faster for other brands. It's because we were going through formulating with our rebrand, reformulating. And I think a lot of what I enjoyed was the conversations with you and your team about, what do we think about this? Is it actually going to work? How's it going to look in the formulation? How's it going to make it feel, So we had a very much collaborative effort with you guys doing the certification, which I really appreciated. I do know brands who've done it in a couple of months. So if you're out there and you're wondering, it can be a couple of months. But I know as well that for us, we're doing another reformulation round now. I've just sent your team yesterday because we're always trying to improve what we do. And of course, having a partner like you that can help us validate what we're doing scientifically is so important. And I always say to people, the thing that this certification gives for me, the most important, is the fact that you actually look at the formulation, not just, oh, that's a cool ingredient, where's it come from? You look at the percentage, you look at the MSDS, so you make sure what I say is in there is in there. You make sure that they all work well together. There's no byproducts created. I mean, anything that isn't really meant to be there isn't there. And that it's actually going to be effective what we're claiming. And I see this with a lot of brands where they'll claim, I don't know, example, they've got sodium hyaluronate in there. But in reality, the actual formulation is 0.005%. It's not doing anything. That's not an ethical claim. So, we are so appreciative for what the certification gives to us as a brand and how it showcases to customers, to retailers, to everyone out there that we are as transparent as we can be, and that what we say is real, and that we're not just marketing for marketing's sake, and that it is actually an effective skincare product. So, thank you for having this, because it's really meant a great deal to us.
Well, thank you for these kind words. I appreciate it. We appreciate it. Yeah, I think it's really a clash between, marketing and, well, I couldn't say science, but what the products deliver. And it's like you said, if you have somebody behind the brand who is so focused on the quality, on what the products deliver, then you have a key to real quality and real results that people actually want, right? When
Definitely,
they buy a
definitely.
product. Yeah.
And I learned so much going through the certification with you. And, I know lots of brand founders that I recommend to you. And I think some of them are a little bit scared, because it is a scary process to discover some things, particularly if you're not a trained cosmetic chemist. You may not always fully understand. I mean, even I don't fully understand absolutely everything. I can't. So it's just so enlightening to go through it. And it helped with our marketing. It really did. So, if there's anyone out there looking to do it, I would say take the leap. The team is friendly. They are so easy to work with. They're really there to help you. So take the leap. It'll make a huge difference to you and your brand.
Thank you. Thank you. That means a lot. That means a lot. Okay. I would like, I mean, you mentioned a lot about your personal story, about your, how you moved from South Africa to Australia, your first career path, and then the transformation, if we can call it like that. Now, maybe you could tell us, how do you find the personal life and work balance? How do you envision your cosmetic brand in the future, in the next 10 years? You've mentioned a lot of, reformulation. You wanna do and be consistent with the development all the time. Tell us something about that.
Sure. So work-life balance first. The first few years was really bad. I think anyone will tell you starting a small business requires a serious amount of grit and no sleep. Let's not kid ourselves about what it takes. I think the pandemic for me was a real reminder to slow down. It was also because I got pneumonia during that time, not COVID related, and I was forced to slow down. I literally couldn't get out of bed for 2 weeks. So, ever since then, I've just tried to be someone that always gets up early. I always have. I have a couple of set rules. I don't check my phone before I'm at my desk. My phone goes off at 10 p.m. and I do a lot of yoga, but whatever your thing is, just do it, even if it's just walking or whatever it may be. I think you have to keep those basic tenets about your life, right? And then for someone like me that is such an extrovert, I do need to see my friends. COVID really crushed that for me. So, that's the only way I maintain that. I'm not going to show up for work if I've been stuck at home for 10 days. I'm just not going to be the same person. So I think that's really key. It's figuring out your own way, whatever it is that works for you, and being open to have those conversations with friends to say, I can't do this today, or I need to wait. I think everyone's become immensely patient and understanding since the pandemic, which has been great. But looking ahead, I think something I'm really hoping to see, and it's industry-wide because it will help us immensely, is an increase in this transparency. Because something that's happened in the last, probably magnified in the last year, but has been coming for the last maybe 5, is this kind of entering into the market of brands that are very highly funded by well-known faces, by conglomerates just trying to get in on the beauty industry, and they are muddying the waters for brands that are actually doing good work. And I think something that we've sadly seen this year is a lot of brands that are well-meaning with fantastic formulations and good stories go under because of that. So for me in the future, I really want to see consumers see through that, as I say, we increase the transparency in this industry, because we should be asking, who made my product? Why? What is their motivation to join this industry? I really think that needs to change, because with all the small beauty founders I know, it's a central thing. We all feel like we're banging our heads against a wall. It's transparency. We need it, and we need it fast, because otherwise we're going to lose some small brands that are really actually making a difference and are not just here for the money.
Yes, I strongly support the statement. And I think the EU has started changing or adopting the consumer protection legislation. So let's be optimistic and hope that this will also be included.
I think it will. I think consumers, in a way, thank goodness for social media, are starting to see through some of these things, which is great. It also enables small brands to have conversations with consumers that we couldn't have before. And I think something that's changed in the last few years, and I'm really excited to see continue to grow, is when I started Luxe, I found myself kind of dumbing down the way that I speak about the science of skincare and the science of natural skincare, because it wasn't acceptable at the time to, number one, be a smart woman in this industry, but number two, be someone that has a science background. And since COVID, thank goodness, that kind of taboo has gone away. So the increase in this conversation has become so important, and highlighting people with these skills in our industry. We already know there's a huge shortage of women in STEM in our industry, so we need more desperately. And I really hope that conversation continues, because something you would have seen as well is the damning of so-called synthetic ingredients or toxic ingredients. We need to get away from that conversation. We need to talk about the science and pair that with the sustainability of what we're doing, because if every brand was wild harvesting marula oil like we do in Kenya, we would have a huge biodiversity effect. So, you know, if other brands wanted to have a good impact, perhaps they need to consider a synthetic ingredient that wouldn't have that kind of biodiversity effect, right? But these were such taboo things to discuss. So I'm really happy to see it's changing and becoming more open and honest.
Yeah. Great point. Great point. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, sharing your story, telling us about the whole process, about the success, the development of Luxe Botanics, the success that you've had. And yeah, I also think we should be optimistic for the future. And let's hope that these topics that you've also named will be at the forefront, and that you know, we will be able to address them even more.
Well, definitely. I think as you and I are women in the science industry, we can do a lot to raise women around us up, and I think we'll continue to do that.
Yes, that would be great. Thank you, Jene.
Thank you.